There are moments in life when silence holds more power than words. Understanding when to speak and when to remain silent is a skill, a discipline, and often a sign of wisdom. There are times when your words, no matter how thoughtful or logical, can make a situation worse. In such moments, silence becomes your greatest tool, a powerful ally in navigating life's complexities. Think about it. When someone criticizes you in anger, what's your initial reaction? Most people feel the urge to defend themselves. It's natural to want to clarify, explain your side of the story, or even argue back. But responding in that heated moment when emotions are running high rarely leads to a positive resolution. In fact, it often escalates the conflict. Why? Because when people are angry, they're not thinking rationally. Their minds are clouded by emotion, making them unable to listen or understand clearly. Years ago, I had a colleague who became furious over a misunderstanding. He stormed into my office, slammed the door, and began hurling accusations at me. Everything in me wanted to respond, to tell him he was wrong, to defend myself. But I realized that at that moment, nothing I said would make a difference. His mind was already made up, so I stayed silent. I listened to every word he said without reacting or interrupting. Eventually, he ran out of steam. His anger had nothing to feed on, and when he finished, he left the room. I hadn't spoken a single word. Later that day, he came back calm and composed. We had a productive conversation. He apologized for his outburst, and we resolved the issue without any lingering resentment. If I had engaged during his angry tirade, it would have only intensified the situation. By choosing silence, I allowed the conflict to de-escalate, and in the end, it preserved our relationship. This is a key principle to remember. When someone criticizes you in anger, you don't have to respond immediately. Silence creates space for both sides to cool down, think clearly, and approach the situation with a balanced perspective. By staying silent, you maintain control over yourself, your emotions, and the situation. That control is a sign of strength, not weakness. I once heard a saying, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. It's a powerful reminder. Just because someone is upset or angry doesn't mean you need to engage in a verbal battle. As sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. Silence in these moments doesn't mean you agree with what's being said. It simply means you're choosing not to react in a way that will add more fuel to the fire. Picture standing in front of a bonfire. The flames are high, the heat intense. You have two choices. You can throw more wood onto the fire, making it blaze even hotter, or you can let the flames burn out on their own. Silence is like letting the fire die down naturally. Words, on the other hand, can act like fuel, feeding the flames until they grow out of control. That being said, silence isn't about avoiding conversations altogether. Sometimes it's about timing. Once the heat of the moment has passed and emotions have settled, you can have meaningful discussions. That's when you can address issues with clarity and mutual understanding. But that opportunity won't arise if you jump into the fray too soon. You need to let the storm pass before you navigate through it. Another critical time to practice silence is when you're caught up in excitement. Imagine feeling great, everything going your way, and being tempted to make big promises. In that moment, it seems like you can do anything. You might commit to helping others, taking on new projects, or making ambitious plans. It all feels possible in the heat of excitement, but the danger lies in making promises you may struggle to keep later. Enthusiasm can cloud your judgment, leading you to overestimate your capacity. When the initial excitement fades, you're left with commitments that feel overwhelming. Breaking promises doesn't just hurt your credibility with others, it affects your trust in yourself. I've seen it happen time and time again. Someone gets inspired by an opportunity or goal and commits to too much. Maybe they promise to help with a complex project or take on responsibilities beyond their limits. At first, it feels great. But as time goes on, the weight of those commitments becomes apparent. They feel stressed, overwhelmed, and eventually have to backtrack. This damages relationships and leaves them feeling discouraged. Excitement is wonderful. It's the fuel that drives us toward our goals. But like fire, it needs to be managed. If you let it burn out of control, it can consume you. That's why it's important to pause and reflect during moments of high enthusiasm. You don't make promises in the heat of the moment. Give yourself time to think, to consider what's realistic and achievable. I remember meeting a young man after a seminar. He was so inspired by what he had learned that he told me he was going to change his life completely. He planned to start a business, quit his job, run a marathon, and learn a new language all within 6 months. I admired his enthusiasm but knew he was setting himself up for failure. He hadn't taken the time to think about the practicality of his goals. A year later, I saw him again. He was burnt out, frustrated, and felt like a failure because he hadn't accomplished any of his ambitious plans. The problem wasn't his drive or ambition. It was the unrealistic promises he made in a moment of excitement. If he had paused to reflect and prioritize, he might have achieved more. The next time you feel a rush of excitement, remember to pause. Don't make decisions or commitments immediately. Take time to consider what's feasible. This doesn't dampen your enthusiasm, it channels it in a way that sets you up for long-term success. Silence is also vital when you don't have all the facts. How often do we see people jump into conversations, offering opinions or advice without fully understanding the situation? It happens all the time. People love to share their thoughts, even when they don't have the complete picture. This often leads to misunderstandings, confusion, and unnecessary conflict. I've learned it's better to listen and gather information before speaking. I recall a business meeting where an executive started proposing solutions to a problem without fully understanding what the problem was. His eagerness to contribute backfired because his suggestions were completely off base. The meeting dragged on because he hadn't taken the time to listen and learn first. Silence in such moments shows wisdom. It demonstrates a willingness to understand before jumping to conclusions. When you finally speak, your words carry more weight because they're informed by knowledge, not assumptions. Silence isn't about disengaging, it's about being thoughtful and intentional in your responses. In many situations, the power of silence lies in its ability to create space for clarity, reflection, and understanding. By practicing silence, you not only navigate life's challenges more effectively, but also strengthen your relationships, your credibility, and your peace of mind. But here's where true wisdom comes into play. Silence gives you the chance to gather more information, see a situation from different perspectives, and avoid unnecessary conflict. I remember a time when I was working on a major project with a team of executives. One of the newer team members was eager to make an impression. In a meeting, he was quick to offer solutions and jump in with ideas, even though he didn't fully understand the scope of the issue. His enthusiasm was admirable, but his lack of understanding made it risky. His suggestions, though well-intentioned, didn't address the problem we were facing. As a result, the rest of the team had to spend extra time re-explaining the situation, and the entire meeting became less productive. If he had chosen to stay quiet and listen first, he could have added something much more valuable. This isn't about staying silent all the time, it's about staying silent till you understand enough to contribute meaningfully. There's a well-known saying, it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. It's a little humorous, but it holds a lot of truth. When you're unsure, the less you say, the wiser you appear. But the benefits of silence in such moments go beyond just avoiding embarrassment. It helps you build credibility. When people know you only speak when you're informed, they'll pay closer attention when you do speak. Your words will carry more weight because they come from understanding. You become someone whose opinion is valued not because you always have something to say, but because what you say is worth hearing. Silence is also essential when someone else is sharing something important, personal, or emotional. This is where many people make a mistake. When someone opens up about their struggles, fears, or pain, the instinct is often to jump in with advice, try to solve their problem, or say something comforting. But sometimes, people don't need your words or solutions. They just need you to listen. I learned this the hard way early in my career. I was mentoring a young man who was going through a tough time. He came to me, pouring his heart out about the challenges he was facing, his fears, and his uncertainty. My immediate response was to jump in with advice, telling him what to do, how to think, and what steps to take. I thought I was helping. But what I didn't realize at the time was that he wasn't looking for advice. He didn't need solutions. He needed someone to truly listen, to acknowledge his feelings, and to be there for him in that moment. By jumping in with my words, I missed the opportunity to connect with him on a deeper level. I missed the chance to offer the kind of support that only silence can provide. Silence in these moments isn't about doing nothing. It's about being fully present. It's about showing the other person that you're there, listening, and creating a safe space for them to express themselves. Sometimes that's all they need. Just being heard can provide comfort, reassurance, and healing in ways that words often cannot. When someone is sharing something personal or emotional, resist the urge to fill the space with your own thoughts. or advice. Instead, offer them the gift of silence. Let them talk. Let them share. Let your silence show your attention, empathy, and understanding. This approach also teaches us something important about ourselves. How many times have you shared something difficult with someone only to have them jump in with advice or solutions? How did that make you feel? Often it feels dismissive, as though they aren't really hearing you. They might mean well, but by responding too quickly, they miss the depth of what you're trying to communicate. That's why silence is so powerful. It allows the other person to fully express themselves without interruption, judgment, or the pressure to listen to your response. In doing so, it shows them that they matter, that their feelings, experiences, and story are important enough for you to simply listen. Silence is also critical when you're about to make a major decision. People often rush into decisions, speaking their intentions before fully considering the consequences. But taking the time to pause and reflect can save you from regrets later. I've seen this happen in business countless times. Someone gets an idea, becomes excited, and starts talking about it immediately, committing before fully thinking it through. Later, they realize they didn't consider all the angles, challenges, or long-term implications. By that point, they're locked into a course of action that might not be the best one. When you're facing a major decision, silence gives you the space to think, gather information, and weigh the pros and cons. It stops you from making impulsive choices based on emotion. When you do finally speak or act, you can do so confidently, knowing you've thought it through. I recall a moment early in my career when I was offered a business opportunity. At first, it seemed exciting and full of potential. I was tempted to say yes immediately, but something told me to pause and think. After doing more research and consulting trusted advisors, I realized the opportunity wasn't as great as it appeared. There were hidden risks and challenges I hadn't noticed. In the end, I chose not to pursue it. Had I spoken too soon, I might have made a decision I'd regret. Silence also creates clarity. It allows your mind to settle, your thoughts to organize, and your intuition to speak. That inner clarity often leads to the best decisions. The next time you're faced with a major choice, resist the urge to rush in. Be silent. Reflect. And when you do decide, you'll do so with wisdom and confidence. Lastly, silence is invaluable when you're in the presence of greatness, someone who has achieved what you aspire to, whose wisdom and experience far surpass your own. Many people make the mistake of trying to impress such individuals by talking about themselves, their ideas, or their accomplishments. But true learning happens through listening. When you're around someone with great experience or insight, focus on learning. Don't try to prove how much you know. Those who have achieved greatness aren't impressed by your words, they're impressed by your willingness to listen and learn. Silence allows you to absorb their wisdom and grow. By embracing silence in key moments, you give yourself the gift of understanding, clarity, and growth. I recall one of my earliest mentors, Mr. Schulf. He was a man of great success, and every time I was in his presence, I was eager to learn. In those moments, I wasn't the one doing the talking. I let him speak, and I absorbed every word he shared. Mr. Schulf possessed something I deeply admired: success, wisdom, and understanding. I understood that if I spent my time trying to impress him with what I knew, I would miss the invaluable lessons he could teach me. I wasn't there to flaunt my knowledge, I was there to learn from his. Here's what you must understand. Greatness doesn't need validation. Those who have achieved it don't require you to acknowledge their accomplishments. They already know what they've achieved. What they truly respect is the humility of someone who knows when to be quiet and listen. There is a time for asking questions, but the most meaningful questions arise after you've listened carefully and absorbed the foundational knowledge being offered. The lessons I learned from Mr. Schulf extended beyond his words. They came from his demeanor, the way he approached business, and his attitude toward life. If I had been busy talking or trying to prove myself, I would have missed all those lessons. But because I stayed silent and listened, I gained insights far beyond his spoken words. His actions, his presence, and his mindset taught me so much, but only because I was willing to be quiet and let the greatness around me teach me. Think about this. When you speak, you're merely repeating what you already know. However, when you listen, you open yourself up to learn something entirely new. This is why silence in the presence of greatness is crucial. It's an opportunity to expand your perspective and gain knowledge you wouldn't discover on your own. The only way to seize this opportunity is to stop talking and start listening. This principle applies not only to people, but to any situation where you're in the presence of something greater than yourself. It could be a powerful idea, a challenging problem, or a significant experience. Silence allows you to fully absorb the weight of the moment. It is in those quiet moments that you gain clarity, see the bigger picture, and understand things on a deeper level. Silence in the presence of greatness also cultivates humility. It reminds you that no matter how much you know, there's always more to learn. It puts you in the mindset of a learner, which is one of the most empowering positions you can embrace. When you approach life as a student, when you are willing to be silent and learn from those who came before you, the world reveals itself to you in incredible ways. As the saying goes, the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. This awareness doesn't come through speaking. It comes through listening, observing, and absorbing the wisdom and experiences of others. Greatness is often subtle and quiet. It reveals itself to those who are patient enough to sit in silence and absorb its lessons. Now consider another situation where silence becomes invaluable when you are being provoked. This one is particularly challenging. There will be moments in your life when people intentionally try to irritate you, push your buttons, or provoke a reaction. Maybe it's out of jealousy, insecurity, or simply because they enjoy confrontation. Whatever their reasons, you will encounter situations where others provoke you, hoping you'll respond in anger or frustration. In those moments, the urge to react can feel overwhelming. Your heart might race, your face might feel hot, and you may feel an intensity to say something to defend yourself or put the other person in their place. But here's the reality. Reacting in such moments rarely serves you well. When you react to provocation, you give the other person exactly what they wanted. You play into their hands, and often you say or do something you later regret. A mentor once told me, when someone tries to drag you into their storm, you don't have to go. That's the essence of silence when provoked. Silence in these moments doesn't signify weakness or submission. It demonstrates strength. It's about having the self-control to remain calm, rise above the situation, and refuse to let someone else dictate your emotions. I've seen this play out in various aspects of life, business, relationships, and everyday encounters. When someone says something hurtful or provocative, hoping to spark a reaction, the person who stays silent often walks away with their dignity intact. Silence in such situations is a sign of maturity. It shows that you are not easily swayed by negativity and that you are in control of your emotions and reactions. Interestingly, when you remain silent in the face of provocation, it often disarms the other person. They expect a reaction, maybe even a fight, but when you don't engage, it throws them off. They are left to reflect on their behavior and motives. Silence acts as a mirror, reflecting their negativity back at them. I remember a story about a businessman I once worked with. He had a competitor who constantly tried to provoke him by spreading rumors and making public criticisms. Initially, my colleague responded, defending himself and engaging in arguments, but it only made things worse. One day, he decided to stop responding. The next time his competitor tried to provoke him, he stayed silent. He didn't react or acknowledge the insults and continued focusing on his work. Over time, the competitor lost interest because there was no reaction to fuel his behavior. My colleague's silence not only protected his reputation, but also showed his strength and maturity. This is the power of silence when provoked. It shows self-control, strength, and poise. More importantly, silence doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or avoiding the issue. It means choosing not to react in the heat of the moment. It gives you time to process, reflect, and decide how or if you want to respond. Silence creates space for clarity, ensuring you act thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This is one of the greatest gifts of silence. It gives you time. Time to think, to reflect, and to regain your composure. In a world that often pressures us to react instantly and speak without fully understanding, silence is a treasure. It allows you to step back, breathe, and regain control before taking action. The next time someone tries to provoke you, remember the power of silence. Resist the urge to react, stay calm, and let your silence speak for you. You'll be surprised at how much strength and control it gives you. Silence in all of these scenarios is not just about avoiding conflict or trouble. It's about cultivating inner peace and realizing that not everything requires a reaction. You don't have to voice an opinion on everything, respond to every criticism, or engage in every confrontation. Silence teaches you that sometimes the best response is no response at all. When you master the art of silence, knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet, you not only navigate life more effectively, but you also find greater peace, wisdom, and strength within yourself.